Welcome to the Lecture Center. You're back. I'm Marja. And this is the place for those who are interested in hearing something unconventional, refreshing, and far from the commercial realm of what the mainstream considers podcasting. That's right. You came here because you wanted to hear something that you're not necessarily used to hearing. I know. I think about that all the time. I think about how some of these people who have these podcasts are even surviving. I don't know how some people can sit and listen to some of them for hours and hours and hours. There's just no way that I could do it. And there's probably no way that you could do it. And that's why you're here. And I like to say that because I get into some heavy stuff, and it wouldn't be called the Lecture Center, and I wouldn't say that I'm philosophizing on life if we didn't go deep. So thanks for being here, and I want to adjust my lumbar pillow, so that I can get comfortable and we can really delve into what we need to delve into, which is another topic about education. Those of you that have been listening to me for a while and you watch my videos and you read my essays, I have essays on Substack and I have essays on Medium. Whichever one you're on, you can read the essays. I talk a lot about education because I'm so passionate about it. I have been involved in it for many years in different capacities. And in many ways, I'm still involved in it. I will always be involved in it because it is near and dear to my heart. And so what I want to talk with all of you about today is the education that we truly need. What we really need, because we are not getting what we need. The children are not getting it at the lower level. And when we look at the state of colleges today, oh my goodness, we see what's going on. We really don't have to ask ourselves too many questions because it's right before our eyes if we really want to look. So the lumbar pillow is, it's in place. I'm comfortable right now. So I'm going to pump up the volume and cut to the chase. So I've been saying this for years, friends. We're spending a ton of money on education. And there really has been, I can't see where there's been much of an ROI. In fact, I think that what we're witnessing is a dramatic decline in the education as a whole. And as a nation, it's evident that children and college kids, as I said before, they can't even read or write. Most college grads are unqualified and they can't even apply for the most in-demand jobs that are out there right now. And since we're talking about in-demand jobs, I have decided, and I'll do that in a moment, to take a look, because I think I pulled up the webpage. I wanted to take a look at a few job sites, because I asked Google what the in-demand jobs were, and Google, of course, regurgitated finance, healthcare, tech, sustainable energy, and I added engineering. Why? Because my experience in the world has taught me that engineering is, in fact, an in-demand job that most college grads in this country do not have the skills. They do not have engineering skills. They can't do it. And there are all kinds of engineers. There are structural engineers. So the list goes on. But the point is, most college grads are not qualified to apply for an engineering job. So I was on Reddit and I was reading that the reason that these jobs are deemed in demand is because nobody really wants them. Of course, that was somebody's opinion, and I beg to differ. I would even go further and say that the real reason that these jobs are in demand is because most people are unqualified to do the jobs. So I didn't stop there. I decided to look on Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin site. And I also went on Elon Musk's SpaceX site. And I found jobs that were basically one and the same. They're looking for the same kind of people to do jobs such as turbo machinery designer, CNC machinist programmer. I don't know what that is, so I didn't go that far. I didn't go and research it. I have no idea what those positions entail, but I can only imagine. How many people in the world do you think would qualify for those jobs? Let's backtrack for a moment. Why would I even look at that website, those websites rather? And I had to look. I had to, because it's a statement. It's a testament to where we are. We are in the age of space travel and the age of AI. This is real technological advancement. This is where we are. And believe it or not, there are people, yes, liberals, who refuse to accept this. Now, not all liberals, but many. And it's too bad, because we're here and we ain't going back. We are, in fact, progressing. And this is what I've been saying all along. It's about evolution and the advancement of humankind. We are going to Mars, whether those who hate Elon and Jeff want to or not. The fact is this: we're maintaining an educational system that is running parallel to where we're going and what we're doing. The system is antiquated, and much of what they're learning is already obsolete. If we want to have a fully functional educational system, we've got to teach for the future, which means that we always have to be ahead. We cannot teach yesterday. We have to teach for advance. You see, our children are ill prepared. They're ill prepared. They're not ready for the world. And the reason we have in-demand jobs is because the average Joe and Mary are unqualified. Period. And that's one reason why so many farmers are being sought out, sponsored, and essentially given visas to come to the States. And some people are upset about that. They're saying, well, they're taking the jobs from the U.S. naturals. Well, I just said it. The U.S. naturals are ill prepared. They cannot do the work. They're unqualified. How can you be mad? How can you argue? You don't have a leg to stand on. Our children cannot do this kind of work. And it's not their fault. It's our fault. Because we are not dealing with this issue and we're not confronting it head on. The fact is, these jobs exist. Somebody has to do these jobs. And it is a shame that it's not a child born on U.S. soil. Again, who do we blame? We need to start blaming those who are in the educational system, because they themselves are the reason for its retardation. They are rejecting growth and innovation. And I'm not just talking about administrators. I know teachers who are doing it. And BS are not allowing for evolution. You know, there are so-called educators, that are terrified of AI. They have already taken a stand against it. They have said that they will not use it. And they're outright against it. I'm telling you, outright against it. And I've been asked, what is the reason for this? Why? It's because they're afraid of it. And this is nothing new. Anytime there is a new technology, older people, and by the way, these people are not that old. So old really doesn't have to do with the age. It's the mindset, the frame of mind that people are in. And it's a fearful one. It's AI is going to take my job, right? That's it. You've heard that one. But let me tell you what I heard from the educators. The reason why they're rejecting AI. So I've never heard this argument. You can drop me a comment if you have. Someone had to explain this to me. The argument was that AI is a detriment and hurts the environment. Are these people serious? Yes, they are. Everything hurts the environment. I mean, this is just, my cell phone hurts the environment. Your diamond ring hurts the environment. I mean, we need to weigh the pros and the cons. We need to think about what tools we will need in schools, in the home, what we will need to actually advance ourselves. You see, the way I see it is this. Education has two main objectives. Number one, to civilize mankind. And number two, to advance or evolve him to the next stage of his spiritual and cultural development. So civilize man, evolve man. And as man evolves, he does become more civilized. And his nature changes from that of the beast to now becoming a man. Because there are 3 stages to the development of man. I never got into all of that. I have years ago with people who listen to me on other platforms, but I haven't gotten into it yet here. I will. That's some heavy stuff. Right now, what we're doing is we're actually failing our children and we're failing ourselves. And it's evidenced by what we're witnessing now. I mean, college seems to be a complete sham. And many people are arguing, what the hell is the point of going anymore? Because that piece of paper has no value. The degree has no value unless you're in some kind of specialized field, meaning that you're a doctor, you're going to go for engineering. That is the only thing that matters. If you're not going for something specialized, forget it. It costs too much money to waste. So what about everyone else? What about the rest of the world, the rest of our society that has an aversion to technology, to AI, to space travel? What about them? Now, here's where we really get into controversy, because what do I say about those people? What I say is that they're going to be left behind, without a doubt. Because, of course, there will always be a place for the arts. I'm a child of the arts, and we need the arts. Man needs the arts to balance him and keep him grounded. There will always be a place for the arts. But there are some disciplines, many, that will just fall by the wayside and be forever forgotten because they will have served no purpose. And many people are going to have to accept that. They're going to try to hold on to it. They're going to try to fight to save it for their jobs. They're going to fight for their jobs because that's what this is ultimately about. Making a living, surviving, but to no avail. Everyone can't be a YouTube influencer. Everyone can't have a successful podcast. Everyone can't be an entrepreneur. Everybody can't be a business owner. Somebody has to go to work. Somebody has to work. And I'm not saying entrepreneurs and business owners don't work. I'm saying everybody can't be the leader of the pack. And many people don't want to. Most people don't want to. They don't want to take on that level of responsibility. Most people just want to go to work, get a paycheck, and come home. And repeat. That's what they want to do. But people are going to find themselves in a serious dilemma in a short while. Because right now, people that are in federal jobs are shaking in their boots. Well, you know what? Very shortly, more people, even in the private sector, are going to be shaking in their boots because they're not going to be able to figure out how they're going to fit into this ever-changing world. And the children are in trouble. You see, we're not taking care of the masses because we refuse to do what is necessary to keep education current and practical. There are many educators who refuse to accept or learn anything new because they don't want to be trained and they don't want to have to go back to school. They want to do whatever they've been doing for the last 10, 15, 20 years because that makes their job easier, because they can just close their eyes and do whatever they've been doing. They don't have to think. And they can continue to sit back and collect that easy money. They don't want to be challenged. They want to remain as they are. They want to remain stagnant. They do not want to grow. And because they refuse to grow, it hinders the entire system. I'm telling you, the system is not just something that is out so far beyond us and outside of us and we're just giving it that name. The system is people. It's the people that make up the system. So I'm talking about educators. I'm talking about administrators. I'm talking about people who reject innovation, people who reject learning anything new, people who reject where we're headed and where we're going because they want to remain where they are. And your children are in trouble because of that. These educators and administrators couldn't care less about the long-term effects of their selfishness and laziness. You see, being an educator isn't just a job. It's a moral obligation because it's a service job. It's no different from any other service professional. It really isn't. All the world needs a teacher. Nobody, and I mean nobody, I don't care if you're a professional athlete, could have become who they are without a teacher. Teachers, or educators as they like to be called today, play an integral role in the cultivation of a thriving society. And therefore I say, if the society is unhealthy and failing to thrive, we really need to look at the educators and the educational system as a whole. And what education is giving now is something antiquated and obsolete. And the idea, let's get into this, the idea that gender and queer studies will somehow warrant a well-rounding and thriving society is asinine. We don't need gender studies. That's not a discipline. And it certainly won't ensure our survival well into the millennium. If you're an educator, you should be questioning why you even took the job. You should also question what the purpose of your job is. And if you think it's to change the world and make it your personal idea of a utopia, that's part of the problem. First of all, it's not your place or mine to frame the world in your own image or your image of what you believe is morally acceptable. This idea, or the idea that the state ought to frame a child's moral compass, is, I believe, overstepping the boundaries of the family. The family is where values are born and molded. And it ought to be up to parents to teach children about identity, sexuality, and even politics. It's not about me, and it's not about you. And that's because the state is an entity that ought to be shaped by the individuals of society and not the other way around. School, which is essentially the state, ought to be an objective outlet and a place of learning and also the dissemination of knowledge. You see, the current biases that are prevailing beliefs of the educational system are exactly what they claim not to be: divisive. Divisive because if you express any dissent, you will immediately be cast out and deemed their enemy, which is essentially the enemy of the state. And I have for quite some time been fascinated by the mindset of these people who think that this is the direction that education should go. Friends, I actually acquired a book by Zoe Weil, and it's called The World Becomes What We Teach, Educating a Generation of Solutionaries. You can already tell by the title where I'm going with this. The first question it seeks to answer is, how can we create a more just, healthy, and humane world? Now, just so you have a bit of understanding about the author, Zoe Weil founded the Institute for Humane Education, and she is thought to be a pioneer in the comprehensive humane education movement that works to create a peaceful, regenerative, and equitable world. And by the way, I jacked that off the back of the book. But the point is, Weil considers the people who solve what she identifies are the world's problems. She said in the book that she wants a world with clean air, clean water, no war, no poverty, and no oppression of people and animals. In short, this woman has a utopian worldview. And what she envisions is for all people and animals alike. In her mind, all of the aforementioned should not be victims of what man has had to deal with since the days of antiquity. What we have had to deal with from the beginning of time, such as poverty, in the mind of Weil, that should not be. Nobody should be rich. Nobody should suffer. Nobody should lack. Nobody should have less than the other. In her mind, education should solve all of these problems, because we have to train children. We have to teach them how to be solutionaries. Never mind learning to read, write, or do math, because we're not going to Mars. We have to stay here. We're going to remain in this world. And as long as we remain here, this is what children must learn. Critical thinking skills. This is all in the book. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are of no importance to people like Weil. And I'll tell you something. This is not anything new. This whole philosophy, educational philosophy, is springing up in different schools all over the country. All over the country. At the higher and the lower. And we know this because we're seeing a rise in activism. Because that is what students are being taught. They're being taught that in order to have a just and equitable world, they must protest the status quo. And they must do so aggressively so that they can bully high-level admins and politicians into acquiescing to their demands. And that's what they're doing. What? Well, maybe someone listening to me is saying, well, what do you take issue with? What's the problem with this vision of education? Well, for one, I'll tell you what I take issue with. It doesn't align with what I said education must do. It doesn't meet my criteria or my standards. And that matters because I have a broader comprehension of the purpose of education through a philosophical lens. Education is not for man to use to bolster himself and puff up his ego. We're not here to make poverty go away or save endangered species. That's not why we're here. And I know for some people, what I just said was absolute blasphemy. But that's because they don't know any better. Perhaps if they dared to probe into the world of philosophy, then maybe they would come to some kind of understanding as to what I'm saying. The issue is really this. We don't know what's truly right or wrong. We don't. We think we do. We hope we do. We hope that we're doing the right thing. We hope that we know what's right. And to impose our sense of morality onto others and project it into the world and into nature. Nature, which is really immutable. The laws of nature are immutable. Nature is objective and impartial. That's why we can't do this. We cannot impose our sense of morality onto people and nature. We can't do it. That in itself is the evil, is the moral evil. And the fact that mankind, people, have no idea, the fact that people can't discern goodness from evil and truth from falsehood is the real dilemma. And that's the one that Zoe Weil needs to be looking into and trying to solve. Instead of man looking at the world and thinking he can solve its so-called problem, Doesn't he just humble himself and look within? Because that's where the real problems are. To think that we, as mere men, have the answers to what the world needs is simply arrogant. First of all, there is a reason for poverty and those that are impoverished. There's a reason for endangered species. There's a reason why some men are affluent and others in lack. Why don't people like Weil and other progressives try to understand life? No, they won't. They instead seek to mold the world into their vision of what they think it ought to be, according to their warped sense of morality. The ultimate issue is that these people seek to indoctrinate the clean slate of a child's mind with their ideologies, and frankly, that is criminal. But it's seen as noble and something that we should revere. But I don't see it that way. I see it as a takeover, a direct infiltration of the human mind, telling it what to believe, what to think, and how to act. And this kind of ideology will assume agency over the will of your child. Your child will never learn to discern goodness, evil, or what is right for him or herself. All action under this teaching will tell the child what's right and acceptable and what is wrong and unacceptable. I'm telling you now, what I'm saying on this podcast would be deemed wrong. Zoe Weil would put me in the wrong because I don't speak in favor of her teaching, and I don't have to. And that doesn't make me wrong. This kind of teaching and teachings like this is a cult-like teaching. And that's because it's not academic. It's more along the lines of a didactic teaching. And it reminds me of what organized religion is all about and why I walked away from it. And that's a whole nother thing. I don't tell anyone to do what I did because I wouldn't be where I am right now if it weren't for organized religion. This is what I'm telling you. That isn't the evil. The evil is the projection of one's own sense of morality onto others. That's it. And so that's what's going on in schools, and it's being infused into every discipline, every class, every subject you can think of. And it's also being taught as its own class. And so many people are okay with it because they don't realize just how damaging it is to the mind. Friends, you may have heard the expression, guard your heart. Well, the same goes for your mind. There are too many people who are under mind control and they don't know it. And most of those people would think that I'm the enemy. And that's a sign of who's controlled as opposed to who can think freely. Let's circle back. I really want to get back to my original notion that education is for the purpose of advancement. Now, the question arises, how do we fight this countercultural educational movement that seeks to not thrust us forward, but hold us back? And let me say this, and I've said it in other talks. It's not for us to fight. This counter movement against truth is in place for the purpose of evolving those who have not allowed it to hold them back. In order for advancement to occur, something must be held back or held in place. And actually, these souls, people like Weil, have no idea that they volunteered to do the work. The situation is that they don't want to evolve. They want to remain as they are, preserved in the world. In fact, the work that they're doing is on behalf of preserving the material world. But you and I, we want to go to Mars. And we also accept the fact that we won't be in this world forever. We know that we're going to die. And so people like Weil are what we call worldly people. And those people always want to remain. They never want to move forward. They reject any kind of forward thinking. They reject, and she might, if she were talking to me, say, no, I don't reject that, but you do. You do reject it. But you don't realize you reject it. And that's the thing. They don't realize it. They don't realize what they're doing. They don't realize what cause they're working for and whose side they're on. They just don't know. So when you think about evolution, think about the motion of a slingshot. Think about how you have to pull that rubber band back in order for it to thrust forward. That's what this is. And this is the way that nature works to sustain man and also advance him. It uses that which rejects evolution and rejects nature to do this mighty work of spiritual evolution. And that's essentially using those, unbeknownst to them, using those who refuse to step up. They're being used as a stepping stone. They remain and they are being used to uplift souls, I'm saying, move them up and thrust them forward. And what we all must understand is that we all come from a retrogressive state, one that is primitive-minded and deeply afraid of life, afraid of growth, afraid of evolution, because that's ultimately what this is about. These are people who are afraid. And we have to have compassion for these people. I'm not out here attacking people. That's not who I am, and that's not what I'm about. Everything, all evolves from the primitive. And yes, this is a primitive state. What Weil is talking about is primitive. She thinks it's evolutionary. That's why she uses the words, educating a generation of solutionaries. But it's primitive. And everything comes from the primitive. The rich man evolves from the poor man. The perfect world that these so-called educators want to create can never be. It can't. We need the imperfection. We need the weak. We need the fearful, the debased, and even the depraved, so that we can uplift ourselves and outgrow those lowly phases of spiritual development. That is how we exist, friends. We all come from the lowly state. We are the wretched. We are the wretch. And if we do not enact an educational system that seeks to better mankind, to help him to lift himself up from the lowly state, we're doing an improper work. Now, by that, I don't mean that education should not be practical. It should address the world and its needs, but the world's needs ought not supersede the needs of man himself, because it must be understood that the world needs man. Well, we talked about a lot today, and I'm interested in hearing from all of you. Leave a comment, please. You can also find me on Rumble. I'm there too. So I'm in a lot of places. I'm around, and I'm also on X, the Lecture Center. I'd love to really go back and forth with all of you about this and let me know what you think. It's time for me to depart. I'll be back, and I hope you'll join me right here at the Lecture Center. Until next time.